Hello, everybody. Some of you know me, some of you don't. My name is David Bennett from the Empowered Living Institute and Metabolic Body Reset program. And today we are kicking off our inaugural Facebook Live interview series. So we're going to do these every couple weeks with health practitioners from around the world, authors, all kinds of interesting people. And we're going to start it off today with a wonderful lady, Jennifer Iserloh. And we are going to talk about her book and about the myths and misconceptions about superfoods. So my first set of questions is going to be all about background. So I want to tell you what a little bit of the format will be. We'll do about 45 minutes, and then we'll leave a few minutes for questions. If you have questions, type them in the comments. We'll try to get them answered. If we can't answer them now, we'll answer them after the live is over. So what we're going to talk about, Jennifer, is if you can give us a little bit about your background and experience in the field of superfoods so that everybody in the audience can understand where you're coming from, what your experiences are, and how they can relate to where you are right now. And then we'll jump into the main areas where people have misunderstandings, their myths or misconceptions when it comes to superfoods for health. And we'll talk about your book, Superfood Alchemy, which is a wonderful cookbook. So could you just tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of background, your education, your experience?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm so thrilled to be here with you. The functional medicine community has helped me hugely with my own healing. And just to give you a little background on where I'm coming from, about 20 years ago, I started my health journey. Where most died from morbid obesity and related illnesses. And since, I've had genetic testing, I've had gut healing protocols, and I have every genetic marker and thing stacked against me. But through working with these amazing practitioners, I've been able to turn the tide, and I lead a very happy and healthy life. So functional medicine is just, an amazing practice. And, I really started out my career in the health industry as a chef. And 20 years ago, I decided to quit my job as an office manager and follow my dream to become a chef. And I really believe that when you're on your soul's purpose and you're doing what you're meant to be doing, I always think of Joseph Campbell. He talks about helping invisible helping hands that help you along the path. That when you're doing your soul's purpose, all kinds of amazing things happen to you. And that's exactly what happened to me. I went to culinary school. I interned. I had the opportunity. Just felt it kind of fell in my lap. Of course, I did the hard work and I was on my healing journey. But, I started interning in a restaurant, and a few years later, I found myself working for celebrities like the Seinfelds. So it was a pretty crazy ride. I was in the food business for about 10 years. And during that time, I was working in the fine dining scene in New York City. I worked in a lot of kitchens there, so I have a lot of professional training. But I was still having some problems with gut issues and other issues. So I started researching, and I became very interested in writing. And shortly after I was a private chef for a lot of celebrities, I decided that, being a private chef working in restaurants was really tearing down my health. So I really went deep into the writing side of food, and I started to write for a lot of national publications like Prevention, Self Magazine. I started to do some television as well. I was working with Montel Williams. I did the Today Show. But I still felt like there was something missing. I was doing all the food recommendations, eating everything that they prescribed, but my gut was still off, and I just felt plain exhausted. And that's when I found functional medicine, and I started to go way deeper down the rabbit hole of health. And I wrote 4 cookbooks for functional medicine practitioners. So I learned all about the gut and the brain and how the gut is connected to the brain. And I went way deep on gluten. And I actually had an undiagnosed gluten sensitivity that I found out about because I was chatting with Dr. Tom O'Brien, and we were talking about wrinkles one day. And he was like, have you had, the proper gluten test done? And I had, a gluten test for my regular MD, but it wasn't the correct testing. So, this whole world of healing is, a much deeper place that you definitely want to explore. And I think there's a lot of information out there that is just the tip of the iceberg, or some of the information trust in my own body. So that's why, the kind of work that Dr. David does and other practitioners like himself is so powerful.
Awesome. So, yeah, I mean, you're obviously the right person to be discussing this between your, training, between your own journey through the process, as well as your extensive writing and development of cookbooks and recipe books and whatnot. So let's just jump right in then. So what's the number one misconception or myth that everyone you talk to has about, superfoods and how they're used in health?
Yeah, so I think, the best advice you could ever give someone health-wise is to eat vegetables. There's no way around that. It's really sad how the media tries to vilify certain vegetables. I wrote the book called 50 Shades of Kale, and I remember when kale was really popular that there was crazy journalists saying that kale will kill you, it's bad for your thyroid, this and that. But the honest truth is vegetables are the best thing you can put in your body. They have a lot of nutrients that your body needs. They're super detoxifying. But that said, one of the misconceptions is that not all vegetables stack up the same nutritionally. So this is why a lot of people in the health industry came up with the term superfoods. So if you're eating something like celery and iceberg lettuce all day, you're not going to move the needle in terms of your health because they just don't provide the same mineral and vitamin profile. So this is why you have to understand that superfoods is a really important categorization to explain to you which vegetables to eat. So if you're eating something, and nothing against celery, I actually got hate mail from someone because I bashed celery on a podcast. I'm not bashing celery. I eat celery, but I combine something with something like a superfood such as kale, broccoli, and spinach because superfoods by definition per cup have 100 to 1,000 times more nutrition than foods in the same category that are not superfoods. So this is why it's really important for you to understand that you want to have your superfood list. And there are superfoods that are not vegetables, but vegetables are really the key to health. And then the good quality fats, the good quality proteins are the things that you sprinkle on top.
Right. Superfoods have, depending on who you're talking to or who you're listening to, you can do everything with them. You can do a little bit with them. But I guess the question is, so what really, and you may have covered this, but the real difference, the celery difference is obvious, but when you talk about kale versus, let's say, just Bib lettuce or romaine lettuce, what's the big difference that we're all going to get?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people don't know because they don't run nutritionals. So part of my job as a recipe developer, and my recent book is number 24. So I've done 24 books plus thousands of articles. And part of my job is to run the nutritional numbers of the recipes I create. And in that process, it's been a real awakening of what exactly is in food. So if you look at something like a cup of kale, you're getting 100% of certain nutrients like vitamin A. So when people complain about wrinkles or they have bad skin or macular degeneration, they can't see, as you get older, as women hormones get imbalanced, their eyesight changes as well. So eating things like kale is really important. Now, a lot of people out there will say to me, oh my gosh, what if I have a thyroid issue? You cook it, okay? So if you want to get rid of the you just steam it or saute it or bake it. So, there's the do's and don'ts of how to prepare superfoods. But if you're eating something like Bib lettuce, there's basically zero nutrition in it. And a lot of people come at me and say, there's fiber. Newsflash, there isn't fiber. You need about 35 to 45 grams a day of fiber. The more, the better. Kale is actually low in fiber, but other superfoods are high in fiber. So this is why you don't want to just focus on one superfood. Maybe one day you do kale, the next day you do broccoli, which is super high in fiber. Next day you do spinach. Now, certainly if you have certain ailments, like you have autoimmune illness, there's some vegetables, even in the superfood category, you're going to want to watch out for if you have a flare up. So this is another thing of why it's important to work in the functional medicine space to fine-tune your personalized diet, including superfoods. But basically, if you don't have autoimmune, superfoods are great for everyone.
Awesome. Awesome. So you mentioned kale and you mentioned broccoli and you mentioned spinach. But if you had to give me three or four more, so let's say just a handful of your favorite superfoods to use on a regular basis, what would they be?
Yeah, I mean, definitely carrot is one and red bell pepper. The trick, though, to remembering with superfoods is if you can, please, please, please go organic. Again, I'm going to bust another myth here. Organic is not a fad. Unfortunately, especially with gut health, we're realizing that they're spraying conventional produce with some really dangerous pesticides that can obliterate your gut bacteria. And that pesticide contains glyphosate. If you do organic, you avoid it completely. Now, I know a lot of folks out there that are on a budget are going to be like, oh my gosh, if I go organic, but there's lots of stores like Trader Joe's, Target, which I call Target, that has organics that are really affordable. Red bell pepper can be one of the more expensive ones, but it 100% of your vitamin C intake versus eating something that's super sweet like an orange. And again, nothing against oranges, but it's not a superfood. My other favorite superfoods that we probably don't have time to talk a lot about in this live because that's a whole nother topic is adaptogenics. So superfoods like turmeric that I'm sure you guys know. Now, while they don't provide a lot of things like your standard nutrients that you need like vitamin A, vitamin C, they do contain a lot of incredible nutrients that can halt inflammation. And I've experienced that for myself. So reishi mushroom is one of my favorites. Turmeric is another. Ginger is another, especially if you have things like GERD. But if you have GERD, you probably have some kind of SIBO or gut dysbiosis as well, because everything is kind of ruled by the gut. The good news is a lot of these superfoods like broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, everything from the cruciferous family. Cruciferous is the ones that stink because of the sulfur, but the sulfur is a super healing compound. We've also got the berries in there. We've got spinach. We have a lot of nuts and seeds in that category. A lot of these things are incredibly detoxifying for your gut and your entire body. So those are really helpful. Now, it doesn't mean I don't include non-superfoods like tomatoes, celery. I do, because if I'm making my Italian sauce and I come from an Italian-American background, I'm going to put those things in my sauce. But, if I have a friend who's coming over who has rheumatoid arthritis, I'm going to think twice about serving tomato sauce.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I laughed originally when you said Target because that was what my father used to call it all the time. So, well, let's dig a little deeper into organic versus non-organic, conventionally grown, however you want to term it. There's a lot of rhetoric. There's a lot of just conversation about, organic doesn't have more nutrition. Organic does have more nutrition. Again, commercials fine, but there's a huge difference in what you are actually ingesting ultimately, correct?
Yes, yes. So let me just give you a few of the basics. And I've researched this heavily, and I've actually been to organic farms and talked to people that work there and the PhDs who run those farms. Earthbound Farms was one of the ones I visited. So the deal is, the main reason to go organic is just to avoid all the horrible things that they're doing with conventional produce. And, no offense to the farmers, it's incredibly hard to raise a crop without pesticides. I get that. But unfortunately, what we didn't understand when they first created these pesticides is we deem them safe for humans because they did do some trials, but what they don't understand is they may be safe for humans, but they're not safe for our gut bugs. And we're more bacteria than we are human. And they're killing the bugs in the field. They're doing the same thing to your gut bugs that protect your immunity, your gut health, your brain health, and also create those neurotransmitters that are so important for your brain, and a host of other things. So we have that component. The other thing is non-organic. They're allowed to use all kinds of sewage and horrible things to fertilize. I won't get really deep into that because it's yucky, but just to keep in mind, that's how you get E. coli and salmonella and these types of things when you eat raw vegetables that are conventionally raised. Another thing that people don't understand is that organic farmers a lot of times will test for heavy metals, which is pretty amazing because there's a lot of heavy metals in our water. And this came about through the industrial age when they started to pull heavy metals out of the earth and use them in factories for things like felt and light bulbs. But now they're in our water and they're everywhere. But what's great about organic farming is they actually test for these. And heavy metals they disrupt our nervous system, they disrupt our brain. A lot of people think kids with autism have autism because of mercury. So, going organic is one of the best things you can do. Now, that said, let's talk about the cost, because I'm a chef and I get that. My biggest cost in my family, more than the shopping, more than buying jewelry, is food. So when it comes to cost, if you're really on a tight budget, and this is something I got from the organic farmers, what they told me, which I think is a fantastic tip, is to make sure that you're doing anything that's leafy or above the ground organic. Anything under the ground, you can still do conventional up to a point. So carrots, potatoes, I wouldn't do non-organic though, because they're GMO. Sweet potatoes under the ground are okay. Onions are okay. Then you also want to look out for the dirty dozen. The dirty dozen are the ones that are sprayed the most heavily. I've already mentioned them in that superfood list. So the superfoods that I mentioned, which are the leafy greens, kale, broccoli, and apples is also a superfood, and berries, they're the most heavily sprayed. Grapes and peaches are heavily sprayed too, but they're not a superfood. You can still enjoy them, but that's kind of the lowdown about organic, and that's one of the reasons you want to watch out. The other thing that's really interesting that people don't know that I learned from visiting farms is that USD organic, and you always want to look for that organic circle, USD organic, are highly, highly regulated. And people actually go to the farms and make sure that they're following the practices. So one of the farmers I visited said that by mistake, they planted a non-organic seed, a line of seeds in a organic field, and they had to let that field rest for 7 years. So what's so wonderful is they're really protecting us against a lot of the pollutants that are in conventional foods, including genetically modified foods. Now, in the beginning, again, just like the pesticides, we didn't think they were bad for us. But now that we're learning that they're actually horrible, again, for our gut health and the lining of our intestines as well. So if you're doing organic, you don't even have to think twice about GMO. And GMO is everywhere. It's in the three largest crops in our country, which are corn, potatoes, and soy. They break down soy to use it as a thickener in a lot of packaged products. Corn is everywhere. Potato is in starches. It's in packaged foods. So if you're doing organic foods that are not packaged, organic packaged foods are okay as a treat, but I don't recommend them because they have a lot of salt and sugar. So really, organic, non-packaged whole foods that are superfoods are the key to health.
That was a wonderful summation of exactly where the situation is. And I was happy to learn a couple weeks ago that one of the largest sellers of organic products in the country is a warehouse market, Costco. I mean, they are ranked way up there in organic, which is good because that makes it a lot more convenient and affordable for a lot of people. So we've talked about the organic myth. We've talked about the fact that you need to eat vegetables no matter, there's no way around it. So what's another myth or misconception about superfoods that's out there? Here, let me throw this out. This is one of I got to juice them. And I remember somebody telling me, oh, you do kale and you roll it up in your hands and it isn't as bitter, but it always didn't taste good to me. So
I'm going to talk a little bit about how to prepare superfoods the most nourishing way, and that will actually cover those myths that will include juicing and raw. So just in my background, I've done every single diet out there you could possibly imagine because I test everything out on myself. So I've done the raw diet, I've done paleo, keto, I've even done the grapefruit diet. I've done it all. I'm on the metabolic reset right now. So what I have discovered from my own biology, and keep in mind, everybody's biology is different. So this is why keto works well for some people. Paleo works better for others. Some people can do gluten and some cannot. We are very, very bio-individual. And until you get the full battery of tests, you will not know what the perfect diet is for you. And this is also why some people say, Coconut oil is good. Coconut oil is bad. It depends on your genetics. I can't do coconut oil. My husband can. So that being said, the best way to construct your plate, in my personal opinion, is to cook the vegetables first. You can do a portion raw, but raw vegetables, too many of them, can be very hard on the digestion, especially if people have issues with fermentation, and hard on your thyroid if you have thyroid challenges like myself. And if you know they're in their 20s, their thyroid's in good shape, great for them. But as you age, raw isn't always the best. That being said, I eat a
Good.
raw salad every day because I enjoy it, but most of my vegetables are cooked. Second part, when you cook food gently, you don't want to overcook it or boil it. You will lose all the vitamin C. It's water soluble. When you cook food gently, saute it in some good quality fat, steam it very lightly in a little bit of water, it actually activates a lot of important fibers and nutrients, making it more bioavailable, which means your body can pick up the nutrients better. The other way is to add a little bit of fat. Now, if you're doing the metabolic reset, you can't do that. You're doing a cleansing protocol, that's fine. But you want to use a good quality fat. So you want to use something like olive oil. Almost everyone can have olive oil. Grass-fed butter is okay, rich in omega-3s if you can tolerate dairy, or coconut oil if you know it works with your genetics. And then last but not least, you want to make enough. Okay? Forget that food pyramid. I love Michelle Obama, but forget her plate thing too. The whole plate should be vegetables. Then on top, you put a handful of the protein of your choice. Good quality meats that can be grass-fed. You want to try to do grass-fed, pasture-raised meats as best you can. I know they're more expensive. They're about $4 to $5 more per pound, but they are well worth it because they have less of the fats that inflame your body that are from corn and corn-fed sources, and they have more omega-3 because the animal eats grass the way it is supposed to.
And
And you can also, sorry, go ahead.
what we found out in our family when we made the switch over to grass-fed or free-range chicken was the portion size didn't need to be quite so big. It was more filling, more satisfying, and all of a sudden, instead of 4 large pieces, it was we were going with 4 people, we were going through 2 or 3 pieces of chicken. So I mean that's a big savings as well, but it's also helping your family's health overall.
It's helping it immensely. I mean, a lot of grass-fed tends to be lower in overall fat, which also means calories, but not that fat's bad for you. It's the type of fat. So this is why it's so important to, do grass-fed. You can also do an egg. If you don't eat meat, but you're a vegetarian and you do eggs, you're flexitarian, that's fine. You want to do organic pasture-raised eggs. And what I do is I make like one of those vegetable bowls, cook the veggies, maybe I'll do a little bit of rice if I'm not doing a special diet, and I'll fry an egg and I'll put that on top with a little kimchi. So the next thing you want to do is sprinkle a few tablespoons of some fermented food. That can be sauerkraut, pickles that are lacto fermented, meaning not just pickles with the sugar and the vinegar. So cool. Olives is good. I love kimchi, as I mentioned, sauerkraut. And I use that almost as like the flavoring, but I do salt my meat and cook it. And then, you can add anything else you want. A tablespoon of fat that you like, a drizzle of olive oil, and then you can put tons of flavor on top. Any spices are good. I consider spices and herbs to be a freebie. Take some basil and just use a scissor and slice it up and scatter it around. It's delicious. But that's the healthiest plate. I don't always include grains myself because they're challenging for me to digest. And honestly, nutritionally speaking, you can get the same nutrition from a tablespoon of nuts or seeds than you get in a whole cup of grains. So they stack up similar, and then you're also getting the healthy fats. And I find that a lot of people have a sedentary life, so just be careful about the quantity of grains and if you have any allergies or sensitivities to them.
So that brings up a point. A lot of times people are tested for gluten allergy, and it comes back negative. Probably just the same similar situation that you had when you were tested by your allopathic physician. But there are additional tests to be run to determine whether there's gluten sensitivity, or you yourself know. A lot of times I'll just tell somebody, look, stop gluten for 2 weeks and we won't run a test. Tell me how you feel. And you don't really need a test. That is your test. Do it at home. So that's a huge player. huge player.
Yeah, and one thing I want to mention about gluten is just share my personal story, because I think a lot of people just think gluten intolerance or gluten issues are having a bloated tummy or GI issues, but they can actually present in a neurological fashion. So that's how they did with myself, even though I've had a long list of gut issues. So just to kind of prime people what gluten is, it's a combination of proteins. So if you go to your traditional doctor, and there's many of them. So this is why it's important to get the correct testing. Or you just do the elimination. If you feel awesome not eating gluten, that's the answer. If you are going to eat gluten like my husband does, it has to be organic, so you don't have glyphosate or any of those pesticides on it.
Right.
So that's that. So when I stopped eating gluten, once I discovered I had the sensitivity, I realized that I had severe anxiety from it. And a lot of people don't talk about this, but I since checked in with functional medicine practitioners who are in the brain space, just to make sure that it isn't my imagination. And they were like, oh yeah, it can affect you neurologically. And how it presented for me was I was having anxiety, and I thought it was stress because I had a very stressful job as a chef. And, I was working for celebrities. I was doing television. One year I had to make Oprah's birthday cake, and that was terrifying in and of itself. But I was attributing the fact that I couldn't fall asleep for an hour, where my mind would race, that my heart would palpitate in the middle of the afternoon if I got stressed. I just thought that was regular stress. I did not know it was anxiety caused by gluten intolerance. Once I went off the gluten, 2 weeks later, all of that vanished. And I noticed one night I laid down to go to bed at night and I fell right to sleep. And the next morning I realized, oh my gosh, like what a gift I'm giving myself of being able to rest and not feel anxious during the day just because I kicked out gluten. Now, a lot of people will ask me, but you're a chef, how do you live without pizza? Well, well, honestly, I can say I feel so good not eating gluten that I'm completely untempted. And I do cauliflower pizzas. Sure, they're not like the real deal. If I absolutely have to cheat, maybe once or twice a year I do cheat. But honestly, gluten is something I do not cheat with because I feel so amazing off of it. But again, it's really an individual choice. And I always just press people to either test it out yourself or please get the proper testing. Investment you will ever make is an investment that you'll use for the rest of your life, and then you figure yourself out. And once you know how you tick, and you want to indulge once in a while, fine. But then you also learn how to kind of clean it up or detox after you do that.
I never tested myself for gluten, but I tested using the elimination method, and it was just a noticeable difference on how I felt. And like you, I come from an Italian American background, and every once in a while I go back to that pizza or I go back to that pasta, and I'm like, why did I do that? Why did I do that? But that's a learned behavior that I've had throughout my entire life. Now I have to get past that learned behavior. So.
Yeah. And it's you start to say, well, I think I relish the way I feel over eating the low quality pizza shops.
Junk. The junk.
I'll just make something at home for myself with the same delicious sauce and organic cheese and superfoods, the kale and the mushrooms and the red bell pepper on top.
Oh, that sounds awesome right now. So are there any other major myths or misconceptions about superfoods being used for health that you need to let everybody know about?
Yeah, I mean, one of the trends I see that I do want to caution people against is kind of this idea of, turning superfoods into a pill, a cure-all. And that's where we kind of got ourselves in a mess with traditional medicine. And nothing against traditional doctors. They're amazing at emergency medicine. And sometimes we do need pills, especially when it comes to having an accident or antibiotics. But just keep in mind that one superfood it's not a cure-all. There's also these fads of taking one superfood in hopes. You want to actually do a combination of them, and then you can use them as supplementation when you have certain gaps of something that's going on. But you typically want to work with an herbalist, functional medicine practitioner, or a naturopath, to do it correctly. And this is when I talked about adaptogens. So these are foods like turmeric, reishi mushroom, or rondiola. These are just a few of the adaptogens that I use myself. But you want to know when to use them because they can actually be like medicine and get you into trouble. So that being said, you don't want to do a lot of packaged superfoods. You want to do the standard ones that you eat every day, fresh, organic. Certainly, if you want to play around with some of the adaptogens, turmeric is usually the safest one to start with, but you need to check with your pharmacist if you're on any kind of medication. So you really want to check in with a practitioner before you take them because they actually interact with medications.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's funny. I was laughing as you said, the fad going on because about a year and a half ago, everything was, I'm drinking beet juice. I'm taking this pill that has beet powder in it, and I'm good. I'm good. It'll cure everything, and it doesn't. It doesn't. Everything in moderation and in combination is essential. So it's just, but they're out there. They're definitely out there. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, and they're meant to be used when you need help in certain areas. But I would say the average person, I mean, this is why you go to a practitioner who have years of knowledge to know that, yes, I'm going to give you this adaptogen, but oh no, you have a thyroid challenge. I can't use that adaptogen, or you're on this medication, or you have a gut issue. And it's all about, first having the plant-based diet with lots of superfoods, and then kind of bringing some of these specialty ones in that are used in herbal medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So
like a lot of people love the packaged kale chips. They're fine, but they're not really giving you the same nutritional profile because they're packaged foods and they're dehydrated and processed.
Right, right. Yeah, always better fresh, always better fresh. So now I'm going to ask you a question about, I know an area that you, more than superfoods, more than cooking, more than nutrition, mindset. Okay. So what's the perfect mindset for a person, or what they should, or what they could or should have about superfoods and using them for their health, and what would help them succeed in using them?
Yeah, I think the mindset is really, and this is what I teach in my coaching practice too, is that you should become your own healer. And you have these gurus or guides. Guru means to take from dark to light. And these doctors, which means teacher, to help you to upgrade your knowledge so you can basically, you can be your own healer. So I wouldn't say your own doctor, but so you can be your own healer. So you want to keep an open mind, but it's also about learning. And unfortunately, nutrition isn't taught. A lot of the science that's out there right now is old, like 20 to 30 years behind the curve. And traditional doctors are not taught nutrition, which is fine because going to medical school in and of itself is so tricky. I mean, they're learning the mechanics of the body, but you also need to learn what to feed the body. So this is why it's so important for you to learn about superfoods, because you can give your leg up just by switching around which vegetables and fruits you put in your body. So it's really, the onus is on you to learn about the proper way to take care of your body. And the more you learn about you and the more you're open, the healthier you will become. And this whole healing journey is like an onion. You start to peel off layers. Yes. And honestly, it's not your fault in the beginning, because nobody learns this stuff, and there's a lot of conflicting information out there, and unfortunately sometimes people use the information to market things that aren't healthy for you. So education is key.
Dr. Google has a lot of answers, but not always the right answer, because you can put in a hangnail and it comes back as this major or issue in your life. So no, that's absolutely right. You do have to take control of your own health. You do have to take responsibility for your own health. And responsibility starts with your diet. That's one of the easiest things to take responsibility for. So before we take any questions, is there anything about superfoods or myths about superfoods or nutrition that you'd like to share that we haven't covered?
Yeah, I guess the piece that, when you are starting to upgrade how you eat, it's really important. It's good. This whole thing that eating healthy can't be delicious, that's just not true, because I live that. And I, came from a family of amazing cooks. I worked in the top restaurants in New York City, and healthy eating can be delicious when you make it yourself. So that sensual, soulful piece of cooking for yourself and sprinkling it with herbs and spices and making it taste good is such an important part to eating healthy. And that's how you make the habit stick. So this idea, when we were just talking about the pizza even, I just mimic the pizza I used to love. I make it at home with a cauliflower crust. I make my own sauce and I put the superfoods on top. So it's less about necessarily giving up all these things and more just making healthy taste really good. And there's so many resources out there to help you do that. And, it's just really important for you to nourish your body on the physical level, the mindset level, and the sensual level too. That's what the mind, body, spirit connection is all about. And that's the true holistic parts of the puzzle so that, you can feel your best.
Absolutely, absolutely. In this group where we're doing this interview, over the holidays, my kids and I made cookies, and we kept posting the different ones. And basically, we went to various grocery stores and pulled off what were supposed to be healthy cookies and organic cookies and pure ingredients. And some of them tasted great, some of them tasted terrible, but the process of making them was the enjoyable part. The kids cutting them out and doing things. And that's exactly what you're talking about. The process of cooking, of baking, and using the good ingredients and knowing that you are making this for you, your husband, your family, whomever, they're getting the benefit of this. So it is a spiritual journey. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, cooking delicious food for someone that's healthy too is an act of love. To me, it's the greatest thing you could do for anyone. And I remember when I used to be a private chef working for celebrities, I'd saute spinach for them, but I'd do it with a lot of love. And they'd always say to me, "What's in here? What's that spice?" I'd be like, "Salt, pepper, olive oil." I don't know, because I never put any spice in it. But it was the point that I was doing it with so much attention and care. But I was also giving them something that I knew was really good for their body. So there was so much energy in there. And I, remember growing up, and I started cooking when I was 8. My granny taught me, and she really taught me the premise of good cooking is seasoning, but also putting a lot of love in things. And when you're constantly doing that, you're already setting an intention for you to have awesome health because you're doing it as an act of loving kindness.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Jennifer, I want to thank you. We'll take some questions in a few seconds, but it's been a great interview. This is a phenomenal interview to start off our series. I'm sure everyone in the audience who's watching it live and who's going to watch it on the recordings has gotten a much clearer understanding of the realities of superfoods and how to use them for their health and the cooking process and organic versus commercially grown and some of the myths that surround all of that. So can you tell us a little bit more about your new book, the Superfood Alchemy book that came out? I think it's a few months ago, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been out a while, and it's my favorite book that I've ever written. And it's really the culmination of everything I've done to date. So when I was talking about that trilogy of the body, the emotions, or the soul, and the mind, or the mindset, the book really covers all of those 3 areas around food. So it's a eating that's chock full of a lot of superfoods, but it also gives you meditations, how to use essential oils, and how to think differently around food so that you're bringing those areas together. And, you really can't be healthy if you're just, if you have the perfect diet, but you're neurotic about it, that's not health. Or
Right.
if you have too much sensual energy around food and you're a chef and you're just eating all this unhealthy stuff, but you're loving it, that's not healthy either. Or you have kind of misconceptions about what's right for your body in terms of mindset and you don't know about your genetics, that's, in the long term, not healthy either. So you've got to have those 3 pieces for health. And really, that is the formula. That's what I've learned from functional medicine too. You have to have a holistic. So when people talk about holistic, that's what they mean. But they also mean the holistic viewpoint all the time. So it's not just one day you eat healthy and you don't eat healthy the next day. And maybe you do work out on the weekends, but you lay those three things each and every day in little practices, so you don't drive yourself crazy in the process. So the book is actually based on the endocrine system. So if we have any yogis watching, very similar to chakras, but for lay people, it's just what all your glands are. So your brain glands, so there's a chapter about brain health, for your thyroid, for your heart, your gut health, the sex organs, and your colon. So I have the superfoods for those glands, but also how to think about those areas in terms of emotion and mindset. So we're talking about the heart, got the heart healthy foods in there, but what are the practices that also can make you feel good about yourself and feel good about others? So the book is really to teach you to go through those areas, and you don't have to start in any one chapter. You can start wherever you like, but if you know you have a challenge in a particular area, for me it was the gut area, then flip to the gut section first. Or if you have cognition, or maybe you have dementia in your family, you're going to want to read the brain chapter.
Awesome.
Through the whole book, but it's all plant-based. So it teaches you how to cook vegetables.
Awesome. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments right now. If you have questions afterwards on the recording that's posted, put them in the comments. We'll get notified. But again, thank you, Jennifer, for sharing all this with us. And thank you, everyone who's watching this or is watching the recording. Again, my name is David Bennett from the Empowered Living Institute and the Metabolic Body Reset. I'd like you to I want to invite you, go check out Jennifer's new book, Superfood Alchemy. We're going to post a link to where you can find it in the comments section, or actually I'll post it in the actual posting so that everybody can find it. Go take a look at it, get a copy, because it's an absolutely wonderful book. Let me take a quick glance here and see if there's any questions. No, most of the questions revolved around where's the book? Where can I get the book? So, again, Jennifer, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And you're a wonderful interview. A lot of enlightening information, a lot of important information for everybody to learn and have at hand through her book. So,
well, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Pleasure was all mine. Everybody, thank you. Just remember, you are one change away from the life you deserve. Have a great day.